The purpose of this video is mainly as a tutorial on how to build the Crimson Helm, which is my stab at a design for a laser light therapy helmet. But I'm also going to provide a little background on why I made it. So the low level laser light therapy uses light in the red and infrared wavelengths to promote mitochondrial function, so improve it. You can do more research online, but red light therapy might be beneficial in reducing hair loss. Whether or not that works, it's up to you. Go find out for yourself. So existing commercial products can cost anywhere from $600 to $1,100, and I was not about to spend anything close to that in order to test this out. So I did a little research on existing products, went to Amazon and ordered what I thought would work, and then I started designing in Fusion 360. All right, so I've gotten a little ahead of myself, so I'll catch you up to speed. So this is the previous version, but it gets you the idea of you get your 4 pieces, and in order to epoxy them up together, I found that using zip ties in these little holes just holds these together. So zip tying them together, keep it together, so then you can epoxy. And we've got keyed little spots here, so I don't know if you can see that, but that is keyed such that these 2 pieces will fit together. Same thing right here and over here and on the side. So all these pieces will fit together properly until when it's all epoxied up. In the final version, you get something that looks like so. So now that we've got our helmet all epoxied, we need to start installing some stuff. So the first thing that I started installing were these, the LEDs that go inside all the little holes. So you can see it from the side. They just stick out like that, and they will emit 650 nanometer light right into your scalp. The annoying part about all that is you've got all these little 6mm LEDs, laser diodes. I guess you can use for like laser levels and things like that, but get a little closer. That's what they look like. They've got a focus too, so this thing actually unscrews and you can change the focus. So what I found, and I think the best focus, since it's going to be very close to your body, is just screw it down all the way so that there's no gap in here between the top portion of the body and the bottom one. And so that gives the best focus for up close. And then I had this fancy little USB power supply laying around from a different project. And so you can get 5 volts. So then you can take your little guy, and we got positive and negative there, and I don't know if you can see, but it is glowing. So I've been testing all of these as I go. The procedure is grab one out of the bag, tighten it down, test it to make sure it actually works, and then I can stick it in the helmet. Notice there's these little holes scattered throughout, and those are going to be for terminal blocks, and that's what we're going to do with all these. Alright, so now that I've got all the laser diodes in, I can take some of these handy dandy terminal blocks. Let's see, yeah. And just kind of snip them into groups of 2 so I can have a positive negative. And then I've got a nice little hole in the middle, and I've got a 3mm hole, 3mm holes spaced out on the helmet. And so I'll just stick those terminal blocks there. All the positives will go in the positive, all the negatives will go in the negative, and hopefully get all these wired up in parallel. Okay, so I think that's all I'll need. I think every wire should be able to touch one of these terminal blocks. And since we're going to wire everything in parallel, we just need to touch positive to positive and negative to negative. 16 gauge, and we can do this with gray, so it's closer to black, is negative, and the green is positive. And just for a little clarity, show you what we're working with in terms of powering these. These are 5 volts, but we're going to use a 12 volt power supply, so we need a step down buck converter. So voltage out, voltage in, and I believe got set like that. That's what this little recess is here for. And so we'll just hot glue them in there, or maybe actually use the mounting holes, or both. But that'll sit there. Voltage out this way, so I guess we'll wire around this way. Okay, so after a moderate amount of struggling with this on and off camera, I think I figured out how best to do this. So and I think I also figured out that putting all these laser diodes in first is probably not the way to go in terms of sanity. So I think the way to do this would be to put the terminal blocks in first, then start putting in groups of diodes around the terminal blocks so that you could just wire them up all at once. And so that way it becomes more sane to actually wire this thing together. But you can see kind of here, and I'll go through, I'm not going to do the whole helmet right now on camera, but you can see what I did is I numbered the diodes. So these are 1s, these are 2s, and I'll just keep going around as I go, but basically everything in the orbit of one terminal block gets the same number. And so everything around this terminal block gets a 2, and everything around this one will get a 3, etc., etc. And so then everything on, this half of the terminal block will go on this side, and everything on this half will go on this side. And I think that's going to be the only real sane way to do this. So I'll just kind of work on that here so you can take a look and see how it goes. And so I ended up having to strip the ends of the laser diodes. It's not really, there's only about, what is that, 1/4 inch or less of wire showing, so I needed more than that. So I'll just take everything here, and I probably should have labeled this one as a 2 as well. There we go. So I'll just take every 2 that's on the right side of this terminal block and take all the positives, put them with the positive, take the negatives, put them with the negatives. Everything wired up in parallel, And I did test, and maybe for dramatic show, when I'm all done here, I'll hook the little power supply back up so you can see everything in its glory so far. Everything's working. Since these are all wired up in parallel, it doesn't really matter where we stick positive and negative. At least it shouldn't. There we go. You can see what we do have. Those diodes lighting up. And I don't see any blank ones, just the holes for the bolts for the terminal blocks, so we're doing good. So just need to keep doing that all the way around. So I won't bore you with a time-lapse shot. I'll just come back. Alright, here's the helmet all wired up. Let's see if I can get that in shot. You see those things, and we went all the way around and wired everything to the various terminal blocks. We went this way. You can see it snaking around, and then terminates there. And I actually had to put two little pieces of the same wire that's carrying the main current, and just put a heat shrink over them, because these little wires weren't enough to fill the volume of the terminal block there, so needed more wire in there to make them stay. But anyways, that was good. Off camera I did some, I don't know if you can see, but like right here you can see I hot glued some of these in. Most of them are staying in by friction fit, which is good. I'll just leave those, but a few of them that were wobbly had to get some hot glue. I put the buck converter in. I tried drilling some holes because I didn't design anything to hold this in place, but they didn't seem to work very well because it would need to be at an angle, and these are straight. You know, these would hold the board on straight, and they would need to be at an angle because of the curvature of the inside. So I just drilled little holes, not all the way through, but just into the plastic, and then hot glued this thing in place. And you can see, maybe you can see in there. Not the best lighting in here. I'm in a different venue because I'm hobbled up from ankle surgery, but this is held in place. So the next item on the docket is put in the 850 nanometer LEDs to provide some heat for the helmet, which I do. Here's just the strip of them, and they're just little, you can cut them into sections of 3 and then wire them up positive, negative. So these are all done in parallel as well, so just need to put those in place. They've got a little 3M backing, so they will stick to the inside. So I'm just gonna clean out the inside here with some rubbing alcohol, make sure there's no grease or anything in there for me handling it, and then I'll cut these appropriately and, you know, lay them around the inner circumference of the helmet and see what we can do.
And it's all lit up. Beautiful.
Now, let's actually try to wire this up. So input is this side, output's that side. So this will go right to this terminal block. 12 volts will come in to the LEDs and to this guy right here. So I think secure him right there, or maybe secure it right there. Wires come over here, something like that. And then another set of wires go into there. And you just plug it in here. So that would require a zip tie or something holding this in place, which I think is what I gotta do. Okay, here it is. All wired up. So I decided to just keep those holes that I made and angle this guy up so that it'll positively hold on to the end of the 12 volt. So go in there and stay instead of trying to hook in underneath. And got the wires to the the 850 nanometer LEDs in there and over to the buck converter. And then just the output goes into the terminal block. And I fired this up for a little bit, and it works, but you'll notice this is a little more mobile. That's because this thing is at 111 degrees. It was at 160. So these buck converters get hot. So hot glue is not going to be the way to hold on to them. So I'll have to either put some epoxy or design in, at least for this I'll use epoxy, but I'll design in the final design some proper holes that can hold this on here without having to worry about an adhesive. But I can turn it back on just momentarily and we can see how it looks. And I notice as this thing gets warmer, the voltage will decrease, I'm assuming, due to losses from the heat. But we got you can see all that. See, everything converges on a single point, which is what we want. Well, we don't want it, but that's how it was designed. But it is pretty cool to see it all converge and get it closer to the ground. But well, I'm gonna close my eyes, so hopefully you can see all that, because these will not help your eyes. But as you can see, let's buck conversion 143, top of the helmet 95. So that's not bad. That'll keep your scalp nice and warm. So that's really just mitigating the heat coming off this buck converter. Ooh, and the little MOSFET or whatever is switching our voltage. 199. So that gets quite warm. Yeah, so I'll have to pull that off and use epoxy. But other than that, I think we're pretty good to go. Then just put a swim cap over this. All this stuff here to protect it. And then we're good. Alright, after using this for a couple times, found some issues, but designed around them and made a fix. So, first major issue was this little buck converter. Gets really hot. Like I said, like 300 degrees clocked in. So I designed and printed out this little mount for a 40 millimeter fan, and that sits right over top and blows air, and it's powered by the 12 volts and keeps everything cool. So this is a necessity that I didn't know I needed, but it works and keeps everything cool. And I had this thing running for an hour with no overheating problems, so it just works. And this is one of the thicker ones from Noctua. They're a little quieter, so, but I think the thinner 10 millimeter thick ones would work just fine. Alright, one last thing I had to design in, instead of using the swim cap like I thought I was going to, is a shell to protect all these wires, because these are, while they're kind of sturdy, you don't want to rely on just a little soldering joint to hold them in place. So I designed a shell to fit around the outside here, and so I had to go and replace the smaller 20 millimeter M3 bolts with these 30 millimeters, but now these are gonna stick out far enough for the shell to adhere to, and I'll use double nuts. Okay, so there's the shell. Now the astute observers among us will notice, some deficiencies here. That doesn't exactly line up. These don't exactly line up very well. And I think it's just the design itself. The shell, it's basically the same. It's the same form as the helmet itself, just kind of pushed out or expanded out a bit, and then shelled in Fusion 360. And I think that introduced some weirdness. So I'm fine with it though. This looks pretty good, and it's gonna do the job I want, which is protect the wires and stuff. So I think that'll be good. And I think one of the only other things when putting the shell on is that you need to loosen some of these nuts, or some of the bolts, so that you can get them to wiggle, and then you can put the shell on, because with all the bolts fully extended, the holes don't line up perfectly. So, but this is not too bad. I'm fine with it as a prototype. In terms of using the helmet, the commercial products recommend a max of 25-minute sessions once every other day. From what I've read on red light therapy, more isn't necessarily better, so those guidelines sound about right. I can only go about 15 minutes before my head gets too warm, but that might just be me. I'm going to be keeping track of how my hair fares using the helmet, and the commercial products say results can take a few months to notice, so I guess I'll have to be patient on that. That's all for this video. Thanks for watching, and maybe think about making one of these yourself before sinking a boatload of money into something that may or may not work for you.